I was wiping down the kitchen counter after dinner when my phone buzzed against the marble. I almost ignored it. It was late. And after the week I'd had, silence felt like the only peace I could afford. But when I saw the caller ID, my heart stumbled. Aunt Valerie. We hadn't talked properly in years, not since Mama's funeral. Even then, she only offered a stiff hug and a sympathy card that looked like it came from the dollar bin. My mother used to call her the storm before the rain, unpredictable and always bringing something wet and cold with her. I took a breath and answered. Hello? Yasmin, she said, voice softer than I remembered. Baby, I'm sorry to call so late. I have something I need to tell you. There's a tone people get when bad news is about to fall out of their mouth, like their voice is carrying a fragile glass they don't want to drop but know they must. She had that tone. What's wrong? It's about your grandmother. My pulse quickened. I hadn't spoken to Grandma Leela in 8 years. That last argument, the one about my mother and her past, had ended in doors slamming and words we couldn't pull back into our mouths once they flew. She's gone, isn't she? I whispered. Aunt Valerie sniffed. Yeah, baby. She passed this morning. I pressed my hand against the fridge door just to stay upright. Memory surged. Grandma brushing my hair before church, teaching me how to snap the ends off green beans, her laugh rolling low like a warm engine. How? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Her heart, she was sleeping. Then there was a pause then, one that carried 1,000 things we both wished hadn't happened. I could feel guilt rising like heat under my skin, my absence, my silence, my stubborn pride. I'm sorry, I breathed. She loved you, Valerie said quickly, like the words were a rescue rope she needed me to grab. Always did. Even when she didn't know how to show it, the ache intensified. I had spent years believing the opposite. There's something else, she continued. Your grandmother left you something. What do you mean? She left you a house. Her house. Everything in it. She wrote it in her will. My stomach flipped. That house? Mama grew up there. I used to spend summers running barefoot on the hardwood floors, listening to jazz records spinning under the hum of the ceiling fan. That house held history, the kind with teeth. I can't take that house, I blurted before I could stop myself. You already own it, Valerie replied. Her lawyer said you need to come down to Willow Creek this week, sort through things. Sign paperwork. I ran my fingers through my curls. Willow Creek, home, or what used to be. So she wanted me to come back. She wanted you to know something, Valerie corrected. There are things in that house she wanted you to see. Answers she couldn't say out loud. What kind of answers? The line crackled. I heard her exhale shakily. About your mama. About the truth. About that night. That night. I hadn't spoken those words aloud in years, but they lived under my skin like a bruise that never faded. The night Mama disappeared from my world long before she died. The night everything in our family cracked open. I felt a tightness in my chest. Valerie, are you saying Grandma lied to me? No, baby. I'm saying she couldn't tell you everything while she was living. My mind was spinning. Pain, curiosity, fear, hope. They collided in ways that made me dizzy. You'll come? She asked gently. I looked around my tidy but lonely apartment, the place I had built to keep my past out, and suddenly I felt the walls closing in. Yes, I said, voice trembling but firm. Good, I'll meet you there. After we hung up, I stood in silence. My reflection stared back at me in the window. Older, stronger, harder than the girl who once believed everyone she loved could stay. I walked to my closet and pulled down a suitcase. My hands were shaking, but I told myself it was just shock. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger blooming too late. It was something entirely else. A door creaking open after years sealed shut. Because tomorrow, I would drive back to Willow Creek, back to the house I inherited, back to the truth I wasn't ready for. And deep down, a part of me already knew going home would break something open and nothing about my life would ever be the same again. The next morning, I woke before the alarm. Sleep had been restless. Memories flickered like fireflies in a jar. lighting up scenes I thought I had long buried. Mama laughing in the kitchen, Grandma's stern eyes softening only when she thought no one was watching. And that night, the one I didn't dare let fully surface, I packed light. A week's worth of clothes, toiletries, my journal. But leaving my apartment felt like stepping out of a safe room into a storm. I'd built a life in Atlanta with neat lines and predictable rhythms. Work, home, church on Sundays if my anxiety wasn't too loud. No messy family history, no questions I couldn't answer. But now the past had reached out, and it demanded my return. The drive to Willow Creek was 3 hours of highways that slowly transformed into back roads framed by tall pines. I rolled down the window, breathing in air that smelled like damp earth and old summers. Every mile closer tightened and not inside me. When I finally pulled onto Magnolia Bend, a road name I once thought sounded magical, my chest ached. There it was, Grandma's house. White clapboard siding, a wraparound porch with the same old rocking chair, blue shutters faded into gray. The hydrangeas she used to baby were still blooming, though wild now, like they'd been allowed to grow without rules. I parked and stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath my boots, and the sound brought an unexpected sting to my eyes. How could one house hold so much of a person? You made it! I turned to see Aunt Valerie standing in the driveway, thin cardigan over a floral dress, eyes tired but warm. She looked older, not just in age but in the weight she carried. We hugged for a second longer than I expected. "You look just like your mama," she whispered. I swallowed hard. Compliment or a curse? With my brown skin, my mother's high cheekbones, and the same stubborn set to my jaw. I had heard it all my life. I rarely knew how to receive it. "Thank you, I think." She gave a sad laugh and motioned toward the porch. "Let's go inside." The lawyer came earlier and left the key with me. I climbed the stairs slowly, running my fingers along the railing. Same smooth wood, same chipped paint, same air thick with history. When Valerie unlocked the door and pushed it open, the scent hit me first. Lavender furniture spray, dust, and a faint trace of the biscuits Grandma used to bake every Saturday morning. It pulled a sigh straight from my lungs. The living room looked exactly as I remembered. Floral sofa covered in plastic. Lord knows why she protected that thing like it was gold. Walls lined with family portraits, and the old wooden hutch with the glass doors that once held fine china we never used. "She kept everything like you left it," Valerie said softly. I walked over to the framed photo of Mama on the mantel, young, radiant, holding me as a toddler. Grandma used to glare at anyone who touched it, but now my fingers brushed the frame easily, too easily. The shield was gone. "What am I supposed to find here?" I asked. She hesitated. "Your grandmother, she hid truth in places she thought only the right person would look. She wasn't good at saying sorry, but she was good at leaving breadcrumbs." I frowned. Breadcrumbs for what? For forgiveness, for answers, maybe for healing. I wasn't sure forgiveness was something I had in me yet. We walked further into the house. The kitchen still had the same checkered curtains, the same squeaky cabinet hinge. A stack of unopened mail lay on the counter, like the world didn't know she was gone or didn't care. "You don't have to go through everything today. Take your time." Time. That was the thing grief always demanded more of than we could give. My eyes drifted to the back hallway, to the door that led to the guest room I used to sleep in, and just beyond that, Mama's old room, the one Grandma turned into storage after she left, the one no one talked about. "What about Mama's room?" I asked. Valerie stiffened. "We'll get to that later. When you're ready." My pulse skipped. "Why does it feel like everyone thinks I'll break if I remember anything?" "Because we broke, and we've been trying to piece ourselves together ever since." I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the villain I'd convinced myself she was. She was just a woman who'd also lost someone she loved. "I'll start upstairs, just to get a feel for things." She nodded and squeezed my arm before heading to her car. "Call me if you need anything. And Yasmin, be gentle with yourself." As soon as she left, Silence swallowed the house. No TV, no hum of Grandma's old gospel music station, just the creak of the porch settling and the whisper of memories waking up. I climbed the stairs, hand on the rail, heart pounding with a mix of dread and longing. The hallway upstairs was lined with pictures, birthdays, graduations, Sunday dresses, and crooked smiles. I saw Mama at 16, standing on this same porch with a boy I didn't recognize. Her smile wasn't the one I remembered. It was hiding something. I reached my old room. Sunlight filtered through dust, turning the air into glitter. My old teddy bear, Mr. Beans, sat on the dresser like he'd been waiting 8 years for me to come home. But my gaze drifted across the hall to her door, closed, locked. I tried the knob, stiff, unmoving. My stomach tightened. Why had Grandma locked it? What was she trying to protect or hide? A floorboard creaked behind me and I startled, but it was just the house breathing. Still, the air felt charged, like the walls knew the secrets before I did. I whispered into the stillness, as if Grandma might hear me from whatever heaven she reached. I'm here, and I'm ready to know the truth. But the house didn't respond. Not yet. Morning light spilled through my curtains, like it wanted to pretend nothing had happened, like it wanted to erase that bombshell from the night before. Mama's revelation still throbbed behind my eyes. Grace is your sister. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding beneath the weight of a truth that had been held hostage for decades. My sister, my friend, the one woman I trusted more than anyone besides Mama. And now, all I could think about was every moment we laughed together, all the times we comforted each other through heartbreaks and struggles, all the times I told her she was like family to me. Turns out she was. A sharp knock at my bedroom door jolted me from the spiral in my head. Kenya? Mama's voice was soft, hesitant. I took a shaky breath. Come in. She entered holding 2 cups of herbal tea, her peace offering. I sat up as she placed one in my hands and lowered herself into the chair beside my bed. We didn't speak immediately. The steam rose from our cups like the silence was boiling. I know I shouldn't have told you sooner, Mama whispered. Her fingers tugged nervously at the hem of her sweater. A rare gesture in a woman who always seemed unshakable. But I was trying to protect you and Grace. From what? The words cracked as they escaped. From the truth ruining you both. I stared hard at her, waiting, aching. Mama swallowed. You know your father stepped out on me once. Just once. It almost destroyed our marriage. But when I found out his infidelity resulted in a baby, I couldn't let that baby suffer for his mistake. Grace's mother was struggling, lost in addiction, barely alive. I stepped in because God put that child in my path. I closed my eyes, letting the pain wash through me in waves. But why lie? My voice rose, trembling with betrayal. Why let me grow up not knowing I had a sister? Why let me feel alone all these years? Why didn't you trust me with the truth? Her face crumpled and tears slipped free, slowly, silently. Because I didn't know how to face what he did. And every year I kept the secret. It got harder to confess. We both took slow breaths. This kind of pain, it didn't rush. Then Mama added softly, I always prayed one day I'd find the courage. I just never imagined you'd uncover it first. And suddenly, I remembered that moment in my car, the panic in Grace's eyes when she saw me holding the report. It wasn't the DNA she feared. It was losing the only version of our history she'd ever known. I wiped my cheeks. She saw the test, Mama. She saw my name. Mama's head snapped up. What did she say? Nothing. She ran. Mama pressed a fist to her mouth, her breasts sharp and barely contained. Lord have mercy. After a few moments, she straightened, backbone returning. We have to find her. She's probably terrified. I nodded, though my heart felt heavy as cinder blocks, because fear wasn't the only emotion clawing inside me. There was anger, too, real burning anger, the kind that comes from someone rewriting your entire identity. But there wasn't time to sit in those feelings, not when Grace was out there alone hurting. As Mama and I got dressed to leave, my phone buzzed. One new text from Grace. My chest tightened as I opened it. I didn't mean for you to find out like that. I need a little time. Please don't hate me. I reread the message, palms damp with confusion and heartache. How could I ever hate her? She was a part of me, a missing piece I didn't even know I needed. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Daddy's number flashing across the screen. Mama and I exchanged a look, a mix of dread and inevitability. Because if everything Mama said was true, my father had some explaining to do. Daddy rarely called early in the morning. Especially not on a weekday, especially not when Mama and I were still raw from a night that split our lives wide open. I hesitated, but Mama nodded toward the ringing phone, her eyes saying, "Face it." I swallowed hard and answered. "Daddy?" My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, thinner, brittle. "Morning, Kenya." His tone was steady, too steady, like he already knew. "I'm coming over. We need to talk." The line clicked dead before I could respond. Mama and I exchanged a look that said everything neither of us could voice. This was happening. The truth, all of it, was finally clawing its way to daylight. Within 30 minutes, Daddy walked into the living room holding a carton of pastries, like sweets could soften betrayals. He wasn't dressed for work. He wore a plain gray sweater, that tired one he only put on when he was stressed. His shoulders looked heavier than I'd ever seen. He set the pastries down gently on the coffee table, then lowered himself into his recliner, the daddy throne where he watched football on Sundays, like a king surveying his kingdom. Only today, he looked more like a man trying not to crumble. Mama perched on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tight. I sat across from them both, clutching a pillow like armor. Silence stretched, taut and dangerous. "Your mama told you," Daddy finally said, voice gravelly. "Yes," I whispered. He nodded once, slow like each movement hurt. "Grace is my daughter. I should have told you both a long time ago." There it was, the confession that made the walls seem to pulse. I could feel anger pushing up my throat like fire, but before words could erupt, Daddy continued. "I was young, stupid. I made a choice that destroyed trust in this house." His voice cracked. He rubbed a hand over his face, like he could wipe away decades of guilt. Mama's breath snagged as she looked away, blinking fast. Daddy reached into his wallet and pulled out a folded photograph, worn, edges frayed. He held it out to me. I took it carefully. Grace as a newborn, tiny, wrapped in a floral blanket, eyes closed like she was already bracing for the world. Daddy holding her, smiling, but there was pain in that smile if you looked closely, and I did. My throat tightened. "You knew her, you held her, you loved her." He nodded, tears slipping before he could catch them. "But I loved your mama too, and I didn't know how to love both without destroying everything." The heartbreak in the room felt like too many truths squeezed into too small a space. I pressed the photo to my chest, fighting tears. "But you did destroy everything," I said quietly. "You built a whole life on a secret, a sister I never knew, a truth Grace had to carry alone." Daddy didn't argue, just lowered his gaze like he accepted every blow. He should. I stood, pacing as anxiety surged through me. "She's out there thinking we might hate her, that she doesn't belong," Mama whispered. "We have to find her." Daddy straightened, resolve burning in his eyes. "Tell me what happened." So I told him. The DNA results, Grace seeing me holding the report, her panicked escape into the night. With every detail, his expression darkened, not with anger at Grace, but at himself. He stood suddenly. "I'm going to her place." Mama stood too, but I blocked their path. "No, she needs someone who understands her fear. Someone she trusts." I paused. "That's me." They looked at me, surprised, but hopeful. I grabbed my keys with trembling hands. As I headed for the door, Daddy called my name. I turned. He looked small. "Please tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I always cared." I nodded once, because anything more would break me. Outside, the air felt sharp against my skin. My pulse hammered as I drove, streetlights flickering above like blinking warnings. I rehearsed 1,000 versions of what I might say, but everyone sounded insufficient. When I reached Grace's apartment complex, I sat in the car, staring up at her door on the second floor. Light spilled from her window. She was home. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step tightening the knot in my stomach. I raised my hand, hesitated, then knocked. No answer. My heart dropped. I knocked again, louder. After several seconds, the door cracked open just enough for one brown eye to peer out. Red, swollen, terrified. "Kenya?" she whispered. I exhaled the breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Can we talk?" She opened the door wider. Her face carried the wreckage of sobs. "I'm so sorry," she choked. In that moment, anger couldn't compete with love. I pulled her into a hug so tight, it felt like I was trying to fuse us back into all the years we lost. But as her shoulders shook against mine, I knew something else was wrong, something bigger than the secret. She stepped back, wiping her cheeks nervously. She took a shaky step toward the small dining table, where another envelope rested. My chest tightened. "What is that?" Grace looked up at me, fear widening her eyes. "It's another DNA test," she said quietly. "And this one says something different." The room tilted. "Different? What do you mean?" My voice barely made sound. Grace handed me the envelope, slowly, like she was passing me a live grenade. "I'm not just your sister," she whispered. The words hovered in the air, heavy with a truth I wasn't ready for. Then she said the part that sent a chill tearing through my entire soul. "According to this, I might be your twin." The word slammed into my chest like a punch I never saw coming. My hands shook as I stared at the sealed envelope sitting between us. It looked so ordinary, yet it held a truth that could flip our entire lives upside down. I swallowed hard. "Grace, what are you saying?" She rubbed her arms like she was cold, even though the room was warm. I didn't trust the first test. I thought maybe I misunderstood, so I went to a different lab. The room felt too quiet. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to fade under the pounding of my heartbeat. And I forced the word out, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Grace took a slow breath, then nodded to the envelope. "Open it." The paper tore like a scream. I unfolded the results with trembling fingers, scanning quickly, eyes darting over percentages and genetic markers I didn't fully understand, but one bold line stood out clear as day. Probability of full sibling relationship, 99.98%. Twin likelihood, highly indicative. I gasped, the sound sharp, involuntary. My knees buckled slightly, and Grace reached to steady me. "We're the same age?" I whispered, almost afraid to say it out loud. Grace nodded slowly. "My birthday is April 14th. Mine is April 14th. Fact. Undeniable. Bone-deep truth." For a moment, we just stared at each other, mirrors reflecting shock and grief and wonder all tangled together. Then a darker realization slid in like a chill breeze. "If we're twins," I murmured, "Mama carried both of us, so why didn't she keep you too?" Grace closed her eyes, jaw trembling. I've asked myself that every day. My stomach twisted painfully. This wasn't just Daddy's secret anymore. Mama had known too. Betrayal, sharp and cold, sliced through me. Grace slid into a chair, burying her face in her hands. All my life, I thought my mother gave me up because she couldn't take care of me. But now, she looked up, tears glimmering. Now, I don't know who to be angry at. I sank into the seat across from her, the table between us like a confession booth. "We have to talk to Mama. She needs to explain." Grace flinched. "What if the truth is worse?" I didn't have an answer. My voice cracked as I said, "We deserve it anyway." She looked so lost, so fragile, but also brimming with a fierce courage that felt familiar. Same stubborn chin, same determined eyes when cornered. It made sense now, that strange pull I'd felt toward her since day one. Blood calls to blood. I slid my hand across the table and she took it, gripping tight like a lifeline. For the first time, we didn't feel like strangers trying to build a bridge. We were sisters reclaiming something ripped from us. My phone buzzed. Mama's name lit up the screen. I exchanged a glance with Grace before answering. "Baby, did you find her?" Mama's voice trembled, fear lurking beneath it. "Yes," I said, flat. "We're coming home. We need to talk." Mama inhaled sharply, a guilty gasp I recognized well. "We'll be here," she whispered. When I hung up, the air felt charged, like lightning was about to strike. Grace wiped her tears and stood, squaring her shoulders. "Ready?" I said. "No, but we're going anyway." As we stepped out into the hallway, I glanced at her profile, the familiar slope of her nose, the shape of her lips. How had no one noticed? We walked side by side, united by fear and truth and something deeper, something that was ours by birthright. When we reached my car, Grace paused and turned to me. "Whatever we learn today," she said softly, "I want us to stay sisters through it, twins or not. Deal?" Tears burned my eyes. Deal. We clasped hands again, not out of desperation this time, but strength. Then we got in the car, heading straight towards the answers Mama had buried for 18 years. But as we drove, neither of us knew the truth waiting at home was darker than betrayal and more painful than a lie. It wasn't just a story of love gone wrong. It was the story of a stolen child. And Mama wasn't the only one who knew. The drive home felt like sitting in the silence before a storm. Grace stared out the window, fingers twisting her sleeve. I gripped the wheel tight enough to make my knuckles pale. When we pulled up to the house, Mama was already waiting on the porch. She looked smaller somehow, shoulders hunched, eyes swollen like she hadn't slept. When she saw Grace get out of the car beside me, her whole body froze. Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "Hi." Mama covered her mouth as if choking on a sob. "Oh, Lord have mercy." I stepped closer, shielding Grace a little. "We know, Mama. The DNA. We're twins." Her eyes flicked between us, two matching faces, two identical pieces of a puzzle she'd kept hidden. Her tears spilled over as she reached out toward Grace, then stopped her hand midair, unsure if she had the right. Grace stared at her, expression torn. "Why didn't you keep me to?" Mama staggered back like the words hit her physically. She leaned against the porch railing to steady herself. "It wasn't that simple," she whispered. My voice cracked. "Then make it simple now." She swallowed, trembling. "Your daddy, he made decisions without me. The front door creaked open behind her. Daddy stepped out, his face dark and carved in anger. "That's enough," he boomed, looking directly at Mama. "You ain't saying another word." Grace jumped at the sound. I felt my heart slam against my ribs. Mama shook her head, tears falling faster. "No, Harold, they deserve to know." Daddy's jaw clenched, muscles ticking like he was ready for a fight. "There ain't nothing they need to hear." "Yes, there is," I barked, stepping forward. "We know you're Grace's father. We know she's my twin. We know y'all lied." Daddy's eyes flickered, not with guilt, but fear. Fear means there's more. Mama took a breath that rattled. Her voice came low, shaking. "I had 2 babies, 2 beautiful girls, but the doctor—" She stopped, pressing her hand to her chest as if trying to hold herself together. "What about the doctor?" Grace whispered, voice trembling. Daddy took a warning step. "Barbara, he told us one baby wasn't breathing. He took her away before I even saw her. Said she didn't make it." Silence, thick, horrifying. I could barely breathe. You thought Grace was dead?" Mama nodded violently. "I held you in my arms, baby. I mourned your sister. I screamed for her. But that doctor, he said she was gone." Grace stared, eyes wide in shock. "Then how did I end up adopted?" Daddy's voice dropped into a low growl. "Because that doctor got paid to lie." My knees almost buckled. Grace covered her mouth, stifling a sob. Mama glared at Daddy through her tears. "Paid by you! You didn't want 2 babies. You said we couldn't afford 2 mouths, so you let her take her." Daddy slammed his fist against the porch post. "I was trying to save this family. We had nothing. A baby was already too much. 2 would have ruined us." "You ruined us anyway," I said, voice shaking with fury he'd never seen in me before. Grace stepped forward, anger replacing shock. "You sold me like I was property." Daddy's face twisted. "I did what I had to do." "No," I snapped. "You did what was easiest for you." Mama sobbed into her hands. "If I'd known you were alive, I would have looked for you. I swear it." Grace's tears fell freely now. "I missed everything. My birthday, my family, my sister." I moved to her side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me like she'd been waiting her whole life for that embrace. Daddy pointed toward us. "Enough crying. This changes nothing. She ain't been here a day and she's already tearing this family apart." "No," I said, glaring through my tears. "You tore this family apart 18 years ago." Mama looked between us, then let out a breath that sounded like surrender. "Girls, I know this hurts, but we can heal together." Daddy scoffed, stepping backward toward the door. "Not with her here. Not under my roof." Grace froze. Every muscle in her body tensed, and I snapped. "She is family. I said, stepping in front of Daddy, and she's staying with us, whether you like it or not. He stared me down, the same way he'd done whenever he wanted to intimidate me into silence. But I didn't back down this time. For the first time in my life, he blinked first. He muttered under his breath, slammed the door, and disappeared inside. Mama, sobbing, gathered us both into her arms. For a moment, we stood there, 3 broken hearts, clinging to the one thing still holding us together, love that refused to let go. But deep in my gut, I knew this wasn't over. Daddy wouldn't surrender so easily, and what he'd done to Grace, I wasn't sure I could ever forgive. The house felt different with Grace inside it. Like walls long sealed had finally opened to breathe again. Mama led us quietly down the hallway toward my room, wiping her eyes as she walked. "You girls, you are supposed to share a room," she whispered, voice cracking. My heart tugged painfully at that one sentence. Grace looked around, taking in every picture on the wall, every childhood trophy, every tiny piece of a life that should have been hers too. When we reached my room, Mama hesitated with her hand on the door. "I used to rock you here," she said softly, "and I used to imagine doing it for 2. Grace's lips trembled. "I want to see." Mama pushed the door open. Everything inside was familiar to me. Lavender walls, the worn quilt on my bed, framed photos of birthdays and school days. But Grace stepped in like she was walking through a dream she didn't know she had. She picked up a photo from my dresser. Me at 6 years old, missing a front tooth, holding a stuffed bunny. "Was this yours?" she asked. "Yeah." I nodded. "His name's Mr. Buttons." Her small smile flickered like candlelight. "I probably would have named him something worse." A laugh slipped out of me. The first real one since this nightmare began. "Oh, definitely." Grace walked to the window, hands resting on the sill. "We could have sat here together, talking, sharing secrets. You still can," I whispered. Grace looked at me, not just with sadness, but longing. "I feel like I'm trying to remember a life I never got to live." I stepped closer. "Maybe we can start now." She nodded, slowly, but then her eyes drifted toward my closet, and she froze. "What's wrong?" I asked. She pointed to the upper shelf. There, covered in soft dust, sat a second baby blanket, identical to mine. Mama swallowed hard. "I could never bring myself to throw it away." Grace reached up with shaking hands and pulled it down. Blue stitching spelled a name. Grace. Her breath hitched. Her fingers traced the letters with reverence, as if touching proof that she'd been wanted. Mama wiped her cheek. "I told that nurse your name before they took you." Grace clutched the blanket to her chest like she was trying to fill 18 missing years all at once. "That doctor told us you were dead, but I kept your blanket. I kept hoping, maybe." Grace turned and hugged her fiercely. Mama's tears soaked into Grace's curls while Grace shook silently in her arms. My own tears slipped out, not just from pain, but from the beauty of a reunion almost lost. When they separated, Mama walked to the doorway. "I'll start supper. Y'all take your time." The door clicked shut behind her. Grace sat on my bed, still gripping the blanket, and she asked, "How do I fit here? With you? With her?" Dinner used to be simple, a routine of passing plates, clinking silverware, and easy conversation. But tonight, the dining room felt like a battleground, dressed in Sunday best. Mama set the food on the table, fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, her hands trembling just enough that only I noticed. Grace sat beside me, the baby blanket folded neatly in her lap like precious cargo. Daddy's seat scraped the floor as he sat. His jaw was tight, anger simmering behind his eyes. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at her. He just stabbed a fork into his chicken like it had personally wronged him. Mama cleared her throat and tried to force a smile. We should pray. We bowed our heads, but Daddy spoke before anyone else. Lord, he began in a harsh voice, give us strength to endure what we didn't ask for. My head snapped up. Grace kept hers low, but her shoulders tensed. Mama whispered amen too fast just to stop him. We ate in uneasy silence, forks scraping plates, the clock ticking on the wall, a storm building with every heartbeat. Finally, Daddy slammed his glass down so hard water sloshed out. So, he spat, eyes locked on Grace. You really think you belong here? Grace set down her fork, calmly, but her knuckles whitened. I don't think, she said softly. I know. Daddy leaned forward, sneer curling. You look like a mistake God didn't finish correcting. Mama gasped. Ronald! My chair screeched as I stood, fists clenched. Don't you dare talk to her like that. Daddy stood too, towering, rage radiating off him. This is my house, my family, and she is, I snapped. She's my sister. Grace stood up beside me, blanket still in her hand. I didn't come here to take anything from you, she said, voice steady but wounded. I just came for the truth. Daddy laughed, cruel, humorless. Truth. The truth is you were thrown away for a reason. Grace's breath shook. I saw her swallow it down, turning pain into bravery right in front of me. You abandoned me, not the other way around. That landed like a lightning strike. Daddy's face twisted, guilt fighting to stay buried under his anger. Mama wanted me. She named me. She kept a piece of me. You're the one who couldn't stand to look at a reminder of your own mistakes. For a moment, just a moment, Daddy looked afraid of the truth, afraid of her strength. Then his fear turned to fury. Get out of my house, he hissed. Mama grabbed his arm, horrified. Ronald, stop! But Grace lifted her chin. No, she said. I'm not running anymore. I reached for her hand. She squeezed mine back. Sisters united. Either you fix what you broke, or you watch the rest of us leave this table without you. Mama stood between us, heartbroken but resolute. I'm not losing another daughter, she whispered. Daddy looked around, realizing he was outnumbered and wrong, but pride held his tongue like a locked door. He sat, silent, furious, small. Grace sat too, never breaking eye contact with him. I followed, my pulse still shaking my body. No forgiveness happened that night, no healing, just a line drawn clear and deep enough that no one could ignore it anymore. Families don't break all at once, they crumble first. That night, sleep refused to touch me. Too many words replayed in my mind. The cruelty, the courage, the way Daddy's face cracked like an old mask when Grace spoke the truth. Grace was in the guest room, the small one with quilts Mama stitched decades ago. I paced my bedroom, but then something nudged at my memory. Something Grace said at dinner. She kept a piece of me. I slipped into the hallway, tiptoeing past the creaky floorboard Daddy always complained about. The house felt different now, like it was holding its breath. Mama's door was cracked slightly. A sliver of moonlight illuminated her silhouette sitting on the edge of her bed, shoulders slumped, hands clasped like she was holding herself together. Mom, I whispered. She didn't move. I'm awake, baby. Come in. I sat beside her. She still wore her church dress, wrinkles in the fabric from the battles of the evening. Her eyes were red, tired from decades of secrets she couldn't confess. Mama, I said gently, what did you keep? Slow tears gathered before she nodded toward the nightstand drawer. My heart hammered as I opened it. Inside was a tiny silver locket, tarnished but delicate. My fingers trembled when I lifted it out. I bought that, Mama whispered, the day Grace was born. She brushed the metal with her thumb, the touch trembling like memory itself. She continued, I wanted her to always have a piece of home, but before social services came, your daddy, she closed her eyes, swallowed. He took it from her, said it was over. She looked at me, pleading for understanding, not forgiveness, just understanding. He thought he was protecting us, but he was really protecting himself from shame. My jaw tightened. Shame of what? Mama hesitated, fear flickering like candlelight in her expression. She was a reminder, she said finally, voice breaking, a reminder of a moment he calls his greatest mistake. But she was never a mistake to me. She placed her hand over the locket in my palm. There's something inside, she whispered. With a breath held tight in my chest, I clicked it open. Inside was a tiny folded note. I carefully unfolded the aged paper. The ink had faded, but the words were still clear enough to read. Her name is Grace. She is loved. Please bring her home someday. My breath shattered. Mama pressed her hand to her mouth, tears spilling. I prayed those words would return to me. I just didn't know who would deliver them. I closed the locket, fingers clutching the only proof that Mama never let go. We have to show her, I whispered. Mama hesitated, fear again. Your daddy isn't the keeper of our family anymore, I said, strength surprising me. Mama looked up, and for the first time that night, there was hope in her tired eyes. We walked quietly down the hallway to Grace's room. I knocked once and opened the door gently. Grace sat up in bed, tear-streaked cheeks catching the moonlight, but even hurting, she still looked strong, like someone who learned to stand alone, and now was learning she didn't have to anymore. I sat on the bed beside her and placed the locket in her hands. "What's this?" she asked softly. "It's yours," I told her. It always was. Grace stared at it, frozen, confused, afraid to believe. "Open it," Mama whispered. When she did, her breath fell apart the same way mine did. Her fingers traced the note like touching a memory she never got to keep. "She loved me," Grace said. Not a question this time, a declaration, a revelation. "She never stopped," Mama said through a trembling smile. Grace leaned into Mama, shoulders relaxing for the first time since she arrived. Mama wrapped her arms around her like she was afraid to ever let go again. I sat with them, our three hands intertwined around the little silver locket, broken pieces, finding their way back. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was proof that love, real love, refuses to be buried, and it always finds its way home. I didn't sleep the night after Eli's meltdown. I lay there staring up at the ceiling, watching headlights sweep across the walls and disappear as quickly as they came. The house felt like it was breathing, soft creaks in the walls, groans from the floorboards, like he was trying to speak. And maybe it was. Maybe all this time, the house had been holding secrets in its foundation, the kind that waited for just the right moment to break free. By sunrise, I had made up my mind. The boys deserved the truth, even if it ripped the last thread holding our family together. I found Eli outside, sitting on the porch steps, hoodie over his head, tapping his foot like he was holding back a panic attack. He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes that made him look younger and older. All at once. "Mama, what's happening?" he whispered. This was the moment. I sat beside him and let the cold wood steady my spine. "There's something you need to hear," I said quietly. "Something I should have told you long ago." His knees stopped bouncing. "I didn't leave your daddy without reason. And I didn't move us here just for a fresh start." My voice trembled. "I left because I found out something about your father, something connected to this town, to this house." Eli straightened, the fear in his eyes growing sharper. "What do you mean? Your father lived here before? With another woman?" I nodded, and the world seemed to shrink around us. "So he lied to you? For years?" I found letters, pictures, proof. They had a child too. He stared at me like his whole world had cracked open under his shoes. "So what happened to them? Why'd they leave?" "That's the part no one wants to talk about," I swallowed. "The girl disappeared, and the woman died not long after. Your father left this town and never looked back." The air turned cold between us, even though the sun was climbing high. Eli shot to his feet, pacing like a caged animal. "So that's why you moved us here," he accused. "To dig up Dad's past?" "No, I hesitated. I needed answers. For you, for me, and I thought maybe this place could finally tell the truth." His hands balled into fists. "Well, guess what, Mom? I don't care about Dad's secrets. I care about what's happening to us right now." He took off down the sidewalk before I could gather a thought heavy enough to hold him. I stayed rooted there. The porch suddenly felt like a dock I was sinking beneath. Inside, Jamal was eating cereal at the counter, swinging his legs and humming to himself like the world was still safe. "Where's Eli?" he asked between spoonfuls. "He needed some air," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Jamal studied me with those big, curious eyes. Eyes that see more than they should. "Is it about the girl ghost again?" he asked softly. My stomach dropped. "What girl ghost?" He pointed toward the hallway. "The one who stands by the stairs at night. She talks funny, like she's underwater." I didn't breathe. "What does she say?" I whispered. Jamal shrugged, casual as a child could be about the supernatural. "She says she's lost." The spoon slipped from my fingers and clattered against the floor. I walked to the staircase like I was approaching a wild animal that might lunge any second. My hand trembled as I touched the banister. The wood was ice cold. I don't know how long I stared into that dim hallway before I realized I wasn't alone. Someone was standing there. Eli. He'd come back in without me hearing him. His hoodie was half pushed back, giving me just enough view of his terrified expression. "You feel that too?" he murmured. I nodded. "The house is trying to tell us something." Before either of us could speak again, there was a thud upstairs, a heavy one, like furniture dragging across the floor. Then footsteps, slow, heavy, coming closer. Jamal ran into my arms. Eli pressed himself against the wall, eyes glued to the ceiling, as dust trickled down like the house was shaking off its memories. The footsteps stopped. The three of us stood frozen in the living room as those footsteps faded into silence. My heart hammered so hard, I felt it in my throat. Eli reached out and grabbed Jamal's shoulder, pulling him close, his earlier anger replaced by something far more primal, fear wrapped in big brother instinct. "We should go," he whispered, but I couldn't move. Something in me refused. For years, I'd run from the truth, from lies, from betrayal. Not this time. "Stay behind me," I breathed, and walked toward the stairs like a woman possessed. Every step creaked under our weight, complaining, warning. Halfway up, the air changed, heavier, colder, like the house was holding its breath with us. At the top of the stairs, I saw it. The attic door, the one that had always been locked, rusted shut, was now wide open. A chill licked the back of my neck. "I didn't open that," Eli said. "Neither did I." But Jamal tugged at my sleeve. "She did," he whispered. "She wants us to see." I didn't ask who she was. I already knew. We climbed to the attic. Dust swirled around us, glittering in the thin stripes of sunlight breaking through cracked windows. Boxes were stacked like tired soldiers, slouching under the weight of old secrets. In the corner of the room was a wooden trunk, sturdy, antique, the kind that wasn't supposed to look frightening, but did. Eli pointed to the floor. Mom. Scratched into the wood, faint but unmistakable, was a name, Janie. My entire body went still. That was her name, I whispered. The girl who disappeared, the girl tied to their father. Jamal crouched beside the trunk like he was greeting a friend. Small fingers traced the letters with a gentle familiarity. "She was scared," he said quietly. "She didn't want to leave." I swallowed. "Leave where?" Before he could answer, the lid creaked open all by itself. Inside were pieces of a light, a small pink shoe, a faded stuffed rabbit missing one button eye, a birthday card with crooked handwriting, "To Daddy, love Janie," and at the bottom, photos. I forced myself to pick them up. Eli leaned over my shoulder. The first picture was of a little girl in pigtails smiling beside a woman and a man. Their father, our father, but not the way we knew him. No warmth, no charm. His smile looked stretched and wrong, a stranger wearing a familiar face. My stomach twisted. Why would Dad hide this? Eli breathed. I didn't have the heart to answer. The next photo stopped time. A smiling woman, Janie's mother, standing inside our house. The wallpaper behind her, the same crooked window, the same living room we slept in. "This is our house," Eli choked out. "He lived here with them and then just, left like they never existed?" I felt tears burning, blurring the edges of reality. "He didn't just leave," I said, voice cracking. "He erased them." A cold whisper rushed past my ear and I flinched. It wasn't him. Eli's hand clamped down on my arm. What did you just say? I shook my head. I didn't, but the words were hanging in the air, echoing off the walls. It wasn't him. Then the attic lights flickered, boxes rattled, something sharp slammed against the wall like a warning. Jamal clung to me, his voice trembling. She's mad. She said he didn't save her. The air turned freezing, visible breath escaping our mouths. A shadow crawled slowly across the floor toward us, small, child-sized, stopping right at the foot of the trunk. I whispered the only thing I could. Janie, what do you want? The shadow flickered, then stretched upward, growing longer, darker, until a tiny voice carried through the attic. Remember me. The lights blew out. Darkness swallowed us whole. Darkness smothered the attic. Jamal whimpered in my arms, and Eli's breathing turned fast and shallow. My hand searched blindly through the air until my fingers brushed the flashlight we brought earlier. I flicked it on. Its weak beam barely sliced through the heavy dark, but it was enough. The shadow was gone. But the name Janie still stared up at us from the trunk, as if engraved into our fate. I took a step back, pulling my sons with me. My voice cracked, but I forced the words out. We're not here to hurt you. We just want to know what happened. The air tightened, like the attic itself was listening. Then, a soft sound near the window, a girl's sob. I turned the light. There, a small silhouette hugging her knees, trembling. For a moment, my fear dissolved, and my mother heart took over. I crouched slowly. You've been along so long. I'm sorry. Her head lifted. Flickers of a face, pigtails, wide, frightened eyes flashed in the beam. She looked so young, too young for so much sorrow. Jamal stepped forward. His tiny hand reached out. Not afraid. You can come with us, he said gently. We remember you. The attic groaned, wood crying under the pressure of invisible grief. The girl's voice drifted, broken and fragile. He said I'd ruin everything. My breath stopped. He? Eli whispered. Dad? A long silence. Then she nodded. Tears burned hot on my cheeks. So our father, the man we trusted, had abandoned another child. Another life. He ran from the truth, burying her memory beneath our family like a grave. I won't run, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. I won't pretend. You deserved love. You deserved a mother. The house shuddered, not violently, but almost relieved. The temperature rose. The air softened. The heaviness lifted, slowly, like morning fog breaking apart. Janie stood. For the first time, she smiled, a soft, hopeful curve of her lips. And then she began to fade. Wait, I choked, reaching for her, but she shook her head. A single tear traced down her translucent cheek.